All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, we are continuing in our series on Matt Mercer's various subclasses that he has designed for his Critical Role supplements. And today we are going to be covering the Blood Domain Cleric from the Taldorei campaign setting. Just a kind of refresher on class design in 5th edition. Every class should be unique, and they should be unique right from level 1 or 2. Because of that, each class will have these kind of defining things that make the class unique, and they should show up within the first two levels. Now, for the Cleric, they are kind of an interesting class because the things that define them, they're a full spell caster, which doesn't really differentiate them from the rest of the full spellcasters, like wizards, sorcerers. Everyone can cast spells. Because they are a divine caster, when they prepare spells in the morning, they actually have access to the full cleric spell list, plus the additional domain spells. We'll talk about that in a second. And they pick and choose the ones that they're going to use that day, making them pretty versatile. Now, the other defining feature of the Cleric that actually does make them more unique is their channel divinity. Now, paladins get channel divinity, but it's a one-and-done thing. Clerics get multiple uses of their channel divinity as they level up. At level 2, when you first get it, you only have one. And all clerics will have multiple options for their channel divinity. One will always be to turn undead. That is a defining cleric ability. And the other, or others, depending on the domain, will actually be defined by your domain. Now, that brings us to the other kind of unique thing about clerics is they choose their domain, which is their subclass, at level 1. So part of the defining feature of the cleric is going to be built on their domain. So really, I think it's just clerics and sorcerers will play very, very differently right from first level, depending on the domain or their subclass that they choose. So let's dive into this real quick. Now, at the first level, when you choose your domain, you will generally get your domain spells, which for the Blood Cleric fit pretty well. Things like Ray of Sickness, Crown of Madness, Haste Slow, Dominate Person, Hold Monster. These are all the things that kind of fit into the idea of your blood being your life force, the thing that transfers energy around your body, stuff like that. So everything they do generally in their domain spells is going to be built on the idea that they are modifying the body, the blood. So haste makes your body go faster. Ray of Enfeeblement makes Ray of Enfeeblement and Ray of Sickness actually makes it more difficult for you to do things. So I like the fact that the domain spells are all built on that idea of they're almost medical in their abilities, which I find cool. The other thing, you get bonus proficiencies. You get proficiency with the martial weapons, which that kind of leads into another thing about the cleric domains that we've talked about. In general, your divine domains are going to be split into two different ones. You're going to have melee clerics, and you're going to have caster clerics. And the easiest way to tell if you've got a melee cleric or a caster cleric is their 8th level ability is either Divine Strike for melee clerics, and for casting clerics, they'll get Potence as a spell casting. Now, for melee clerics, generally they will get more weapon proficiencies. So when we look at the bonus proficiencies getting martial weapons, you might think that this is going to be a melee-focused cleric. However, when we look at the other ability they get at first level, you'll be a little different. The other thing they get is Bloodletting Focus, which is kind of unique. When you use a spell of first level or higher to inflict damage to any creature that has blood, those creatures suffer additional necrotic damage equal to 2 plus the spell's level. So effectively, and this is a theme you will see throughout the class, for them to get the most out of their abilities, they need to be attacking creatures that have blood. So things like undead, constructs, things like that. This particular cleric is going to be a little bit hamstringed due to the fact that they don't have blood. So a lot of their abilities aren't going to work as well, which is where the kind of generic cleric to channel divinity of turn undead is going to be super useful for this particular cleric. But when you look at this, this turns their casting ability pretty nicely into a lot more damage. 2 plus the spell's level is not an incredibly significant amount, but it's necrotic damage always. So the ability to cast spells that have multiple damage types are always useful because it helps you get around a little bit of the resistances or immunities you might find in monsters. So yeah, I'm a little bit torn about how much I like this. Again, most caster clerics will get bonuses to their cantrips as 8th level, and we'll talk about what the blood cleric gets. This is a bonus to a much more limited spell casting, which is their leveled spells. However, those are also significantly more powerful in general than your cantrip. So I'm a little bit torn. I like the idea. 2 plus the spells level just doesn't seem like it's ever going to make a huge difference. Like if you're casting a 6th level spell, which is a really powerful spell, you're only getting an extra 8 necrotic damage. So yeah, it's interesting. I like the idea. I would actually be okay with it being 2 times the spell's level, because even when you're looking at a 9th level spell, they already do crazy amounts of damage. 11 additional points in necrotic damage isn't going to matter. But 18 isn't going to break it either, but it's more useful than 11 on a 9th level spell. So that's just my view on it. 2nd level, they get one of their additional channel divinity options. And this is called Channel Divinity Blood Puppet, which I think is one of the coolest abilities of this one. As an action, you target a large or smaller creature that has blood within 60 feet of you. They got to succeed in a con save or immediately move up to half their movement and in any direction of your choice and make a single weapon attack against a creature of your choice within range. Dead or unconscious creatures automatically fail their saving throws, and at 8th level you can target huge or smaller creatures. So this is a big deal for a number of reasons. First things first, action economy. You are using your action to force the enemy to take an action. Now, you're not removing any of their actions, so it kind of seems like it's a trade-off, but it's the last part that really kind of defines this for me, which is dead or unconscious creatures automatically fail their saving throws. They don't have to be awake for this. They don't have to be alive for this. So if you are facing some really, really tough monsters, and you're able to down one of them, but the other one's just still going just as strong, you can channel Divinity, the dead one, to get up and attack their ally. And this is especially effective for things like giants, because a lot of giants are large. Some will get up to huge, which would require you being 8th level. But their melee attacks hit really, really hard, or things like quite a few of the dinosaurs are just really, really useful. Now, the other thing that's nice about this is it doesn't say an enemy creature; it's any creature. So theoretically, and this will tie into things like this is really good with like a rogue. Rogues are only able to use their sneak attack once per turn. This could very effectively be used to give the rogue an additional attack when it's not there to turn. It's not using their reaction or anything like that. It just does it. So this would be a really good way with a rogue to get them extra sneak attack, with a paladin to allow them to smite. As much as, I can see it being really useful on creatures as well. This can be so much more useful on your own party. Which again, as much as you're sacrificing your action, you're giving it to another party member who may have a more useful way to use that action. So while the actual economy isn't changing significantly, you're making your actions just worth more. They're able to do more damage, things like that. So yeah, super love that. At 6th level, you get another channel Divinity, which is really interesting to say the least. It's a little bit complicated. You can use your channel Divinity, and it's called Channel Divinity Crimson Bond, to focus on a sample of blood from a creature that is at least 2 ounces, which is not a lot of blood. And that has been spelt no longer than a week ago. As an action, you can focus on the blood to form a bond and gain information about their current circumstances. You know, the approximate distance and direction from you, as well as their general state of health, as long as they're within 10 miles, and you can maintain this effect as though you were concentrating on a spell for up to an hour. So this could be a super useful kind of tracking the thing, especially if you have enemies that like to run away from combat, which I don't think a lot of the DMs take advantage enough of. Is the idea of when an enemy gets to the point where they're relatively certain they're going to die. A lot of DMs will just run them as, well, then I'm going to attack and do as much damage. I like it a little bit more when the enemy goes, just screw this shit, I'm not going to die, and runs away. And it can be extremely motivating for the players themselves, because now, especially if it was a hard one for a fight, they don't get that satisfaction of, oh, we finished it, it's over, and it can show up later. With this, as long as you've got a fair amount of blood, which if they're running away because they're going to die, it's a good chance you've got it. You can now track them for up to an hour. And unless they're a really powerful spellcaster, there's very little chance they're going to be able to get far enough away that you can't to track them in that hour. Even if they try and do something like teleportation circle, which you can transport them across the world, that's still a long casting time. It's not like an action or anything like that. So in the time they're trying to cast it, you can run up to wherever they ran to and catch them. So I really like that. Now there's more you can do. During your bond, you can spend an action to attempt to connect with the bonded creature's senses. They make a con save. If they succeed, the connection is resistance, and it ends the bond, and the cleric takes 2d6 necrotic damage. If they fail, you can choose to either see through their eyes or hear through their ears of the target for a number of rounds equal to your wisdom modifier. And you're blind or deaf, depending on whether you're seeing or hearing, with regard to your own sentence. And then once that connection is over, the bond ends. So, again, for a espionage kind of thing, this is a really big deal. And I'm going to adjust this real quick. And with that, there's so much stuff you can do if you can see through the eyes of your enemy. To give you guys an example from the first Critical Role campaign, slight spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, though this happens relatively early in the campaign. They fought the Briarwoods, and the Briarwoods retreated. Had they had a blood cleric, they could have tried to tracking, or instead of tracking to try and kill them off, they simply could have used this ability. And again, they would just have to collect some blood off the ground and keep it. It can keep for up to a week, and use it to spy on the Briarwoods, to hear what their plans are, the things like that. And in any campaign, like, there is just so much value to being able to effectively bug the bad guys. Now, again, you are limited because you have to get their blood somehow. So this is still going to be a slightly awkward situation if you don't do it correctly. But overall, it's an interesting ability. It's an interesting way to use your channel divinities. So, yeah. At 8th level, now, again, this is normally with every other subclass. Normally, this is where you kind of acknowledge, okay, this is a melee cleric or this is a caster cleric, by getting either Divine Strike or potent cantrips. That's not what happens here. You actually get Sanguine Recall. So I believe this is the only cleric subclass I'm currently aware of that doesn't get one of those at 8th level. So it does make this one very, very unique. What Sanguine Recall does is effectively it's very similar to the wizard's ability to regain spell slots. As an action, you recover spell slots that have a combined level equal to or less than half of your cleric level, rounded up, and none of the slots can be 6th level or higher. You immediately suffer 1d6 damage per spell slot level recovered, and you can't use the feature again until you finish a long rest. So, effectively, this allows the cleric to cast even more spells, which when you combine that with that first level ability they get, the Bloodletting Focus, means this is a very heavily spell casting focused cleric, but specifically a leveled spell casting cleric. They can go through more spells than most clerics. A d6 per spell slot level is not a big deal, especially if you roll low. So sacrificing a little bit of health to get more spell slots is a good trade-off. The other thing that's nice about this, unlike the Wizard's ability, where you have to do it during a short rest, this is just an action. So you can actually do this mid-combat if you need to. Which, again, can have so many useful effects. You know, if you fail your dominate person or your hold monster, and you guys really need it to succeed, and you just don't have the spell slots for it, well, now you do. And again, you can only get up to 6 levels spell slots, but that means by the time you're level to 12, any spell slot you can recover is usable by this. And it might be that you get 4 level 4 slots and a couple level to 2s, because of that bloodletting focus, even those low levels spell slots are just that little bit more useful. Again, not a ton useful because it's only 3 or 4 extra to damage, but yeah. So makes for a really interesting cleric. I do like the fact that it's limited to once per long rest, simply because this could be abused really, really easily, since it's only a D6 per spell level, and you can cure more than a D6 with a first level spell pretty easily. So I like that there is a limit to it, especially if you're using potions and stuff like that. I like that there is a limit to it. But yeah, it means this cleric is going to be shooting off spells a lot more often than your average cleric, which I like. I think that's interesting. Then we jump all the way up to level 17, which is Vascular Corruption Aura. Now, auras are generally a paladin thing. So first things first, this just feels a little bit off to me. But it does fit with the theme. Effectively, as an action, you can emit a powerful aura that extends 30 feet out from you that pulses necrotic energy through the veins of nearby foes, causing them to burst and bleed. For a minute, any enemy creature with blood that begins their turn within the aura or enters it for the first time on their turn immediately suffers 2d6 necrotic damage. And any enemy creature with blood that would regain hit points while within the aura only regains half of the intended number of hit points. And you can only use it once per long rest. So this can be super clutch. First of all, it's extra damage. Extra damage that only affects your enemies, which is always useful. In D&D, not having to worry about hurting your allies, especially with something this large. You know, this is a 60-foot diameter circle with its center on you. That's a large area. In general, most combat is not going to happen on a field much larger than that. Your enemies are generally going to be within that area. So this is effectively all your enemies are going to be taking an extra 2d6 to the damage at the start of their turn, or whenever they enter it on their turn. And you are hamstringing their ability to heal. Now, it doesn't say heal with spells or anything like that. So this would work on things like trolls that automatically regain hit points. Again, the only limiting factor is the fact that this can only be used on creatures with blood. So the other really common group that gets regeneration are undead. Things like vampires, which technically don't have their own blood. They have to drink it from other people. I would leave that up to the DM to decide whether or not a vampire counts for abilities that require blood. Because I don't think in the actual in anything published by Wizards of the Coast, I don't think there's any abilities that are reliant on blood. I think this is effectively a uniquely Matt Mercer thing, with the Blood Hunter and the Blood Cleric both requiring blood. But I might be wrong. I'd have to look over every single subclass ever. So final thoughts on this Cleric. It's interesting. Like I said, I would love to see that first level Bloodletting Focus be more impactful, because 2 plus the spells level just doesn't seem like it does enough. Were I to allow this in my game, I would probably just say double the spell level, just to make it a little bit more useful. Which would mean first level spells would actually get a little bit less from it, because instead of getting 3 extra damage, they'd only get to 2. But everything above that would see an increase in damage, and I think I like that, especially since a lot of clerics are not using their first level spells to do damage. They'll use them for protection. They'll use them to heal, things like that. So I'm okay with them not getting a boost to damage on first level spells. Otherwise, the class itself, like I said, it's interesting. I like the idea that they use the blood as more than just, damage. Their blood domain spells kind of focus on the idea of being able to control people through their blood. Their channel Divinity gives them the ability to control people. I like all that. I think it's really, really interesting. That channel Divinity blood puppet is super, super cool, especially once you get up to where you have multiple channel divinities. That can turn the tide of a fight if you have a really powerful person in your party. Like I said, paladins and rogues tend to be the ones that are the thought of the most. Barbarians would be another one where they get expanded crits and stuff like that, or a fighter that's a champion fighter where they or barbarians get more powerful crits. They add extra damage. Champion fighters get expanded crits where they crit on lower numbers. Even things like a Hexblade has a Hexblade version of a smite they can use, and because they're Hexblades, their wizard or their warlock spell slots are always higher levels. So yeah, that would probably be my favorite part about that, is this blood puppet, and it is a defining feature of this as a subclass because it shows up so early. Right as you get to channel divinity, you have access to that blood puppet. Yeah, this one's a little bit shorter because it wasn't that complicated as this a subclass. But if you enjoyed this, as always, please hit the like button. Lets me know that you liked it and helps with the algorithm and all that stuff. If you really enjoy this stuff, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications by clicking the bell icon so you never miss any of my videos. I try to put out at least two a week, and with Tasha's Cauldron and everything coming out in just a few weeks, there will be a lot of content coming out on this channel. I am super excited about it. I've actually had a chance to look at the table of contents, and super excited about everything on there. So yeah, in the comments below, I would like to know from you guys what kind of interesting combos could you see you guys creating using the blood puppet? Do you think you'd be mostly using it on your own party to just get extra damage? Are there certain monsters you're like, oh, I definitely want that monster to make an attack, because that would be super cool. Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.